Hello everyone. In this video we're going to be taking a look at an article from The Independent out of the UK. It was written on the 27th of December by Lizzie Buchanan, and I love how they're trying to frame this of throwing out the rules to appease voters as opposed to do what's right and develop the country better, on the note of untapped areas getting money put to them to develop them instead of throwing money into areas that are well developed. And I think that's why they're trying to frame it as, oh, they're trying to pay back Labour voters. This is more about the north of England has been neglected for a very long time. They've basically been shit on by the elites in the south and southeast. And now it's time that they finally get treated with a little bit of respect and have, some money thrown their way and some effort put towards improving the conditions there and improving the job prospects and everything else. It's about time. Anyway, let's get into this. Boris Johnson to tear up the rules to boost spending for the North after election landslide. Yeah. Maybe the rules are, I don't know how, I guess the best way to put it would be, maybe they're shitty and they're designed to specifically benefit certain areas. I mean, that could be why. PM attempts to hold on to Labour voters who lent them their votes to get Brexit done. See, this really sours them, that these people who traditionally voted Labour, in large part because of Brexit and large part because of how delusional Labour's gotten and far left it's gone, they decided, whoa, wait a minute, and they chose to put the brakes on. And now they're trying to play it like, oh, well, they pandered to these people and now they got to make good. That's not necessarily what the situation is, because these people see what the EU is doing to the North. They're like, well, wait a minute. The South is benefiting because of the service, economy. The North ain't getting shit. So they're like, well, Brexit, being in the EU doesn't benefit us. The fact of Labour keeps paying lip service to them, saying, oh, we're going to do something to help you out. We're going to do something to help you out. And they never follow through. So Boris, who's kind of Trump-like in where he sits politically, he's an outsider. They voted for a change. Anyway. Boris Johnson's government is looking at ripping up spending rules to divert cash to the North as Conservatives seek to repay voters who deserted Labour at the ballot box. I think they voted in their interests. So this is what's funny is they're trying to, I think, get rid of the fact of and absolve these people of their personal choice and go, oh, well, they were baited by Boris and now he's got to come through. I mean, that's kind of how they're playing this here. Instead of them having, their own agency, heaven forbid. Ahead of the spring budget, Treasury officials are understood to be drawing up plans to rewrite how the government calculates value for money in order to shift spending away from London and the home counties. Yeah, because you've got these areas that are already developed, that already have, strong economic bases, strong business bases, whether it be commercial or industrial or whatever. I mean, industrial being what it is in the West and developed world in general. But those areas already have that. The North has not had that development. You're talking about an area where it was coal country and you had manufacturing and things like that in the North. I mean, now because they've been neglected, they decided to make a change. That's all this is. And they're like, oh, and heaven forbid, the person that they actually voted for, on the note of with voting for, conservative, in voting conservative and voting for the Tories, they basically said, well, I'll give this guy a shot. Now he's going to follow through. And it's like, oh, well, now they got to pay back. They're actually just following through. That's what this is. The move comes as Mr. Johnson attempts to hold on to voters in Labor's traditional heartlands in the North and in the Midlands, who handed him a landslide election victory earlier this month. This is what's funny. Oh, he's got to try to hold on to him. This is the idea of like how they tried to frame like the Trump situation. All right. Oh, well, he's got to hold on to those people. They're not going to. His support here in the U.S. is as strong as it was when he got elected. It's actually stronger, in my opinion. Now, this is a type of situation like that, and they want to play it like, oh, well, he's going to hold on to him. No, these people voted Labor, and Labor kept bending them over and screwing them. They voted for a change. Right now, they're going to give him a grace period. So they're trying to make it sound like, oh, he's scrambling to try to keep him. No, they wholeheartedly will give him a grace period. That's what, Trump supporters did, because they're like, well, I understand it's not going to happen overnight. They don't want to admit that. It's so sad. Under the plans, investment decisions for transport, infrastructure, and business would evaluate improving people's well-being or narrowing the productivity gap with the South rather than overall national economic growth. Well, see, here's the thing. That's not necessarily true, because they're not mutually exclusive. You can work on improving the North with transport, infrastructure, business opportunities, and still have it be something that's going to benefit the overall national economic growth. They don't want to admit that, though. They're trying to make it sound like, oh, well, he's going to sacrifice the country. Excuse me. If you improve the North in the UK, if you improve it, you're going to improve the whole country. You're going to improve its overall economic growth, because you'll actually have businesses there instead of people collecting, oh, wait a minute. That's probably what Labor wanted. That's probably what these lefties want, is the people in the North to be living, in council housing, collecting the equivalent of, welfare and food stamps and everything else, and keep on voting Labor. They want them on the Labor plantation. And these people said, enough is enough. I want a good paying job. I want to be able to have a decent home to raise a family. I want to be able to have a decent car to transport them from point A to point B. And you know what? Labor ain't doing shit for me. And they voted for the Tories. And because they did that, oh, well, this isn't going to benefit the whole country. I mean, this is the type of narrative bullshit that they want to push. Because these people went against the grain. And oh no, heaven forbid you actually do something to improve their, the economic conditions in the North, in the North. Heaven forbid. Because, oh no, that won't benefit the whole country. How won't it? It's going to increase the economic growth, because you're taking an untapped area and you're opening it up. Jesus. I mean, the Independent isn't like liberal really, but come on now. I mean, they're not like lefty shitbrick. They're not great, they're biased, but they're not awful. They should be able to look at that and say, well, wait a minute. If you actually open up the North to, economic opportunities, could benefit the country overall. I mean, come on now. Anyway, Dominic Cummings, the Prime Minister's top aide, is said to believe current value for money rules favor London and the southeast of England as they focus on maximizing economic return. Yes, exactly. See, the government should be benefiting the whole country. This is no different than the flyover states in the U.S., the Rust Belt and all that. This is no different. They've been neglected for a very long time. Like the North has been neglected in England, in the UK. Well, in England specifically, but I've been using those interchangeably. Anyway, but they had enough. And they voted differently, because it used to be, here in the U.S., it was a given. Like with the Midwestern housewives, in the Rust Belt and stuff like that. They were pretty much guaranteed Democrat voters. Okay, they were like Oprah loving, do what she tells them, Democrat voting, Clinton loving, like types. And those women got older. And That was a good chunk. And you had a lot of, like, the union jobs, okay, because the Rust Belt, you still had manufacturing, stuff like that. So you had these people voting Democrat. And they got screwed over with, China, Clinton giving them favorable nation status and opening up manufacturing, just flooding there and everything else. They got screwed. And they kept paying, going, oh, well, the Democrats are going to do something for us. Democrats are going to do something for us. And Trump came along and they said, you know what? Democrats ain't doing shit for us. Maybe, just maybe, Trump might do something. Let's give him a shot. And that's what happened here with Boris. And they don't like that fact. And now that he's actually following through, they're trying to paint this picture of it where, oh, well, this is why he's doing it, because he's got to keep those voters. Those voters are more than willing to give him a chance. And that involves, a grace period to try to get shit done. The fact that he's stepping up now, they're trying to twist. It's so disgusting how they're doing that. A senior Treasury source told The Times it is a very big thing. You have to think about the outcomes you want to achieve and work backwards. True. And this idea is you want the North to develop. And the only way you're going to get the North to develop is to go by the simple fact of it takes money to make money. So you have to invest in the North to entice business to go there. It's that simple. The traditional way to look at this is simple. GVA per head. There's a question of whether you can change that to take into account well-being productivity discrepancies. It is an exciting debate, and you're going to hear a lot more about it in relation to the budget. Lord Jim O'Neill, a former Treasury Minister, is now vice chair of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, a non-party political organization formed to boost growth in the North, said at the present system does not make any sense. Yes. You have a guy here, a lord from a former Treasury Minister saying that the current system screws the North. I mean, he's not putting it that way, but that's what he's basically saying. He said, by definition, it adds to the attraction of projects in heavily populated, economically vibrant areas, usually London, and doesn't allow for potential major productivity-enhancing projects elsewhere, including many in the North and especially Northern Powerhouse Rail. Yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, because they're going to look at this. Well, this is about maximizing profit. So you're going to have the government incentivizing companies and individuals investing in those areas as opposed to areas like, say, the North. The Prime Minister is also considering shifting civil servants outside of London and creating government bodies in the North, including an advanced science agency to boost research, according to the Financial Times. Now, that right there could be a very good thing. See, what's funny is, okay, people thought back in the 80s that IBM was nuts when they opened up their Boca Raton. It was Boca Raton, right? Yeah, in Florida, when they opened up to develop the PC. Now, the funny thing is, if they had kept the business going, it would have brought in other technology, because it did. At that time, other tech companies moved in there. It was an incentive. So, because they said, well, we're going to develop something here. It's going to be low-key, yada, yada, yada. But once the cat was out of the bag, others went, oh, there's got to be something going on in Florida. That's how the Silicon Prairie happened. But because there is no one looking at the North that way, because there's been no incentive for them to do that, no one's moving there. You got to entice those first people, those first businesses, the first companies to come in. And that will start drawing others. And at a certain point, you don't need to invest as much money. So that's the idea of once you get something at critical mass on the note of growth, you don't need to keep pumping money in. But they keep pumping money into an area that's got critical mass while the North is suffering. The Prime Minister, the Prime Minister is also considering shifting civil. I already read that. I'm sorry, but that is a really good, smart thing. I mean, because that's going to bring technology to the North. It's going to, bring not only technology, but also other science-based endeavors. Anyway, Northern Rail could also be split into two franchises ahead of potential renationalization of the under fire operator report suggested. Which, might benefit it. I'm not too familiar with the Northern Rail situation, so I have nothing to say on that one. Mr. Johnson made a symbolic trip to Sedgefield, Tony Blair's former seat in County Durham, on a victory lap of the North, where he vowed to repay the trust of Labour voters who helped him into Downing Street. I love how they take it out of context. All right. They don't want to give him the whole full statement. This is what gets me. When you have a reporter or a publication, well, the reporter's, or an author, a writer or a reporter with a publication, taking and only using a partial quote, there's a lot more to it. They're trying to portray this as a situation where he's basically scrambling to try to hold on to them. These people are going to give him a grace period. He even quoted the ex-Labour Prime Minister's 1997 conference speech, where Mr. Blair famously said his party were the servants and the people were the masters. Yeah, it's called calling out his bullshit in his own territory. That's literally moving into like Blair's territory, lifting a leg and popping a squirt. It's marking territory. It's like, bitch, you're usually Labour area. Voted for me, motherfucker. Deal with it. Voted for me and the Tories. Deal with it, bitch. Oh, I love Boris. He's a hot shit. Meanwhile, Mr. Cummings has told allies he is keen to shake up Whitehall in the new year, which will include the closure of the Brexit department after the 31st of January deadline. Yeah, because he wants a hard Brexit, and I got no fucking problems with that. That's the only way the UK is going to break clean from the EU. And when I mean clean, okay, they're not going to be bent over taking it on a regular basis from it. That's the only way that they're going to come out with, not only their like dignity and pride intact, but also their sphincter, as it were, The Prime Minister is also expected to carry out a major cabinet reshuffle in February, an attempt to shift the government's priorities beyond Brexit. Okay, very smart thinking. You got to give Boris credit. He's actually looking at trying to get shit straight there because he wants to minimize the impact and make it as negligible as possible with Brexit. And part of that will be creating an environment for the North to develop economically. Whether it be, industrial, commercial, or whatever the case may be, but to have development there. Because that's going to help the overall economy. That's going to help the overall health of the country. You're going to have less people living in council housing, collecting, like I said, the equivalent of welfare. The UK's equivalent of welfare and food stamps, SNAP and whatever else. Yeah, well, from what I understand, Sargon will probably still be collecting that shit while he's collecting all his Subscribe Star money. A Treasury spokesperson said, "We will work across government to ensure investment is focused on where it is needed across the UK and delivers value for money for the taxpayer." Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this idea of maximizing gains, it's a little ridiculous. All right. Governments, yes, they are the idea of a business and should be run like a business. On the note of, like, say, looking at the overhead and stuff like that, because you look at the United States government, for example, you have all these pencil pushing bureaucrats, and I'm almost positive, especially with technology, okay, because I have a lot of family members who've worked for the federal government, and I'm not talking like post office jobs, okay, I'm talking like for like the DOD and shit, and basically you have a situation where you have a shit ton of useless people that are there. They're, protected. They're because they're a government employee. They've got these protections, and we need more people. And the idea is you can't run a government like that where you just have all these friggin' people on the government dole. It just doesn't work like that. You need to run those types of aspects of a government like a business so that you can do things like Instead of like the way corporations are run today, where, oh, we got to maximize profit. Oh, we got to make record margin, we got to do record. Instead of looking at the longevity of the company. All right. It used to be, when it came to business, you looked at the longevity of the company. You didn't look at the fact of maximizing every friggin' penny you can out of the business. You looked at the fact of, I want this business to be around 20 years, 50 years, 100 years from now. I don't, because when you do it the other way, you don't know what's going to happen in a year. All right. And you could fuck shit up and tank a company. Whereas the other way, you might hit a hard time, but because you've looked at the fact of the longevity of the company, you can weather those things and usually survive them. That's not how, that's not how businesses are run. And that's not how the UK is being run. It's being run like the greed is good, 1980s, maximize profit type of shit. And now we're looking at the fact of long term. What's in the best interest of the UK for long-term health? And that would be investing in the North. So that's basically what's going on here. And I'm for it because, when you look at how the North has been treated over the years, you look at how it's lost its, economic base on the note of, say, coal and manufacturing and that. It's about time they get a little money thrown their way to invest in the area to try to offset that loss after how many friggin' decades? Anyway, yeah, I've covered this well enough. I'm just going to leave things here. If you liked this video, depending on where you are watching it, please give it an upvote or thumbs up. If you want to know when new content of mine hits the internet, don't forget to subscribe to one or more of my social media or video accounts listed here. Also, with YouTube, don't forget to ring that bell. You can find all of my video content on both BitChute and YouTube. This may not be the case with other places I upload to, but I will try to minimize this happening. You are always welcome to interact with me at any of these sites on the list, so feel free to do so. If you have anything you want me to cover in a video, when it comes to news or current events, send it right along to me. I will try to do my best to cover it. As always, thank you for watching.